Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Committee on Higher Education. Today is April 14th, 3 p.m. in room 229. We are here to advise and consent on 3 of the governor's messages. On the Committee of Higher Education, myself as chair, Senator Michelle Kidani, vice chair. We have Senator Gil Keith Agaran from Maui, and also Kurt Favela. Is he on yet? Okay, I know he will be on shortly. And who are we missing? Oh, Glenn Wakai, Senator Wakai. I'm sure he'll be joining us shortly as well. So with that, members, I'm going to go ahead and take care of our housekeeping items. I can find my housekeeping. That should be pre-recorded. Okay, this meeting, including the audio and video of remote participants, being streamed live on YouTube. You will find links to viewing options for all Senate meetings on the live and on-demand video page of the legislature's website. In the unlikely event we have to abruptly end this hearing due to major technical difficulties, the committee will reconvene to discuss any outstanding business on Thursday, April 15th at 3 p.m. and a public notice will be posted on the legislature's website. For people participating remotely, your audio will be muted and video disabled shortly before it is your turn to testify. And you will be limited to 1 minute each, and at the end of the 1 minute, the audio will be muted. I'll be reading a list of people who have submitted written testimony for each measure. We do apologize if the closed captioning does not accurately transcribe your names. And if you're interested in reviewing the written testimony, please go to the legislature's website. You will find a link on the status page for the measure. If there's temporary technical glitches during your turn to testify, we may have to move on due to the time limits, and we appreciate your understanding and remind you that the committee has your written testimony. The committee will take up, in the interest of time, all the testimony for all 3 GMs today, followed then by questions to each of the nominees. Because we are limited to a 4:30 hard stop, if we are not able to complete all of the testimonies today, we will finish up tomorrow and we will reconvene at 3 p.m. on April 15th, also in this room, 229, and a public notice will be posted on the website. And so we will take all the testimonies so that the testifiers don't have to come back tomorrow if in the event we need to come back. So with that, we will start. Board of Regents, a little background. The affairs of the University of Hawai'i fall under the general management and control of the Board of Regents pursuant to Article 10, Hawaii State Constitution, and Chapter 304A, Hawaii Revised Statutes. The board formulates policy and exercises control over the university through its executive officer, the university president, and the board has exclusive jurisdiction over the internal structure, management, and operation of the university. The board is composed of 11 regents who volunteer to serve without compensation and are nominated by the Regents Candidate Advisory Council and appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate. Starting with GM 787, submitting for consideration and confirmation to the Board of Regents is gubernatorial nominee Wayne Higaki for a term to expire 6/30/2026. And Wayne is a reappointment, and people testifying in support: Jairus Hedges, Toby Taniguchi, Alapaki Nahalea, Arthur Usijima, Robert Momsen, Carl A. Carlson Jr., Randolph Moore, who is here on Zoom. Randy, would you like to go ahead and give your testimony at this time?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. I don't have anything to add to my written testimony. Regent Higaki has been a very productive member, and I encourage you to confirm his reappointment.
Okay, nice and sweet. Thank you very much. Also, Jan Sullivan. Jan, aloha.
Hi, thank you, Chair Kim and committee members. I stand on my testimony in strong support of the reappointment of Wayne. He's been a great addition to the board, and I hope you'll let him have another 5 years. And if I may just slip this in, I didn't submit written testimony, but I would like to also support the nomination of Diane Paloma. I'm glad to see there'll be another woman on the board. I think we need more women, and I think she'll be a great addition to the board. So thank you.
Thank you for that addition, Jan. Ernest Wilson, Simeon Akoba, Patricia Cook, William Burgeon, Richard Matsuda, Ben Kudo. Is Ben on the line? No. And then we have the nominee, who we will get back to. So members, is there any questions that you want to ask any of the testifiers here for Wayne Higaki before moving on? Okay, I don't see any. So we will go to testifiers for GM 786, submitting for consideration and confirmation, Diane Paloma, for a term to expire 6/30/2026. She is a new appointee, and we have quite a number of testifiers. Actually, we have, 36 testifiers that have sent in support of testimony. Congressman Kai Kahele, Representative Scott Matayoshi, Office of Hawaiian Affairs, Michael Iosua, Kali'i Pang, Randy Pereira, Mufi Hanneman, Christian Fern, Jeannie Johnson, you're here. So Jeannie, would you like to go ahead and give your testimony?
Hi, aloha to everybody on the committee there. Just would like to stand on my strong testimony in support of Dr. Paloma. She is an awesome mana wahine, and she would really do that board proud. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And we have Jairus Hedges, Laurel Johnson, Alice Chong, Kekaha Spencer, Laura Reichart, Erwin Wright, Walden Au, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And 17 others that have said all testimony in support. I'm not going to read them all in the interest of time. Members, any questions for Jeannie Johnson regarding Diane Paloma? Hearing none, we will move on to the final GM 785, submitting for confirmation. William Hanning III for a term to expire 6/30/2026. We have Paul Moses III, Jairus Hedges, Wayne Baltazar, MD, Vicky Shambra, Glenn Ryder, George Reed, Anthony Guerrero, Miki Kiyokawa, Juni Takashita, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 others, all in support, none here on the Zoom. And so with that, I will go back to GM 787, Wayne Higaki. Wayne, if you would like to give your opening remarks, welcome and thank you very much.
Chair Kim, Vice Chair Kidani, and committee members. I really don't have a prepared statement, but I do want you to know that it's been an absolute privilege to have served as a regent the last 6 years. And I look forward to this afternoon's conversation. I hope that it will result in a positive confirmation for me to serve another term with the university and for the state of Hawaii. So with that, senators, again, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, we're open for questions. Any questions for Wayne Higaki?
Yeah. Hi, Chair.
Senator Favela, you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, I just have a few, I just wanted to talk about EM raises. You stated in your questionnaire that was sent to you that you are personally applaud the university president for offering pay cuts for executive and managerial EM personnel and region regent and which the region supported. Yet, okay, so hold on, yeah. So, yet, as the year before, that the EMs or the 5 VPs got huge raises. IT VP got a 13.2% or 35,000 in November 2019, despite of the incremental 4%, 8,300 raise. VP, yes, can you hear me? Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, sorry, my phone acting up. Okay, sorry. Where was I? 8,300 raise in the previous year. VP for admin got 12% or 30,000, bringing the salaries up to 272,000. A 9% or 10% amounted to approximately 27,000. This less than the raise that they got in 2019. In the Office of General Counsel, a VP General Counsel got 40.959% or close to 35,000 raise. And most of her and assistant approximately got 7%, while most of the other EMs got 2 to 4% raise. Do you feel that these raises was warranted?
I believe that the raises were warranted. It was at the time that the appropriations were made for the general GM area and specific to the president's recommendations. I believe it's important to compensate those individuals at that time, yes.
The reason why I asked is 272,000, and I remember we talked about this before with him, and to justify that all of these, pretty much about 5 of them, had almost the same salary at the end of their pay raise. And I remember and I recall this because he said that they were great team players, and for me raising at the start of the pay that they had already wasn't small money that they started with. So to have that kind of pay raise and that kind of reasoning that he had given, I really don't see the justification of saying because they was just great team players. Because I brought up the fact that they're great team players, and everybody that's great team players should have the same pay. I don't think that would be fair for the NFL players that the lineman doesn't get paid the same amount as the quarterback. Do you think that's justification for that?
I'm not sure what you're asking. I think.
Well, the $272,000 right across the board for 5 of these guys.
I didn't get that last part, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, the 472,000 across the board for this five VPs. That's the question that I'm asking. I mean, you're saying that the president, you see that they justify, you think that the pay raise was fair, but the region should have, before the decision was made, did he come back and confer with you guys, or you just let him make the decision and then the region was notified of the pay raise?
The president presented the proposed pay raises through I believe, the Budget and Finance Committee initially, and through, I can't remember what other committee, and then it came to the full board, yes.
Maybe I can,
Okay,
can I follow up on that, Senator Favela?
yeah, okay, go ahead.
I think, Wayne, what he might be alluding to as well is the fact that you said that you thought it was warranted, yet during this time, the attendance of the university was lowered. The fact that there were a lot of issues that was going on, Mauna Kea, And so some of these EMs that got the raises, it was not based on their individual performance, but it was based on a set number of $272,000, and it was backed into that number. So I'm not sure how you could say that it was warranted when it wasn't based on their performance. And I'm going to bring up some things today that talked about some failings that went on during this time, and yet they still got the raises. So do you want to clarify how you feel that it was warranted?
As I remember the presentation, most, if not all, of those raises were based on a calculation. I don't remember the exact base of the calculation, but I remember it must have been. I'd have to look at the minutes again to give you an accurate answer.
Okay. Well, just for your information, I don't know if you were present at that meeting that we had, but I believe I asked the question to the president that it appeared that all of the salaries were backed up into $272,000, which is why the IT person got a $35,000 raise. The vice president of facilities got a $30,000 raise. And he said that they were all part of his team and that he felt the whole team should get paid the same amount. So I don't know what he presented to you guys, but certainly that's what he said to us in the committee, which I think Senator Favela also alluded to. So I don't know where that justification that you talk about come from. But Senator Favela, did you have any other questions?
Yeah, sorry, sir. I don't remember the lady's name that was there at the region. And I remember you asking a question about how this raises came about. The reason why I asked him if he had come before them prior or after, because while I recall she saying that this was all given to him after the fact that he already made a decision on the pay raise. And then I know you questioned on her, the leadership of the region, on how their criteria on the president Nazaner's way of working with them and letting them know that she doesn't work for him and she has to come up, they have to come up with a better way of going forward as a region. So that's why I'm asking him these questions as a region or being a part of this region. Is this going to be the practice going forward?
I think there's always opportunities to look at processes and to ask the right questions at the right time, and I look forward to doing that.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Senator Kidani.
Thank you, Wayne. Okay. You were part of the Mauna Kea Management Board. Did you sit on? Yeah.
That is correct. As an ex officio member, yes.
So I think in part of your response to Senator Kim's question, you said serving on these task groups allowed you to contribute to issues of importance to the university in a more targeted manner. Can you explain that statement in regards to specifically the Mauna Kea Management Board and the TMT issue?
Sure. The Mauna Kea Management Board is a community board that is appointed by, the membership that is appointed by the Board of Regents. Is based out of University of Hawaii Hilo with Chancellor Bonnie Irwin's guidance. The two Hawaii Island regents sit as ex officio members of the board. In that capacity, we participate in the conversations, but do not have voting privilege. Over the span of my term, we were having discussions regarding TMT specifically, and regular discussions on other management items of the entire mountain. Being on that board allowed the regents to have to be part of that discussion for that local board.
How did you guys prepare, or were you prepared for what happened on the mountain with the protesters? Was there any indication that that kind of crowd would happen for that long a time?
You know, the board's function relative to what happened with TMT was really restricted to the activities above all of what happened, in the form of managing the rangers for the mountain through the Office of Mauna Kea Management. So we didn't have any role in managing the protest area specifically.
But did the Mauna Kea Management Board have a role in the management of the TMT and the mountain with the telescopes on it? Because that seemed to be part of the reason for the protest, not just against the TMT, but the fact that they didn't, the Hawaiian clubs, etc., did not believe that the university managed it at all.
Right, so the university manages the land, and for TMT was involved in negotiating the lease for the land for TMT.
I'm specifically asking about the management of the property, though. Are you saying that you think the university lived up to whatever was required of them as far as managing the property and having the telescopes that were no longer in use dismantled and removed, or was that not part of their job?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for clarification. Yes, the Mauna Kea Management Board assists the university in managing the mountain, and you know, we've done a pretty good job over the last few years. I think there were some issues early on, as described in the audit that was performed earlier. The more recent activities on the mountain through stewardship, using other groups like Kaukamauna, specific to the cultural activities and sensitivities, have improved over the last few years, and I believe the managing part of it is vastly improved, and look forward to seeing how that might move forward, depending on what structures deemed to, or what type of management structure is going to look like.
Okay, I'm not sure you've answered my question, though. I'm still asking as to, for instance, if they are supposed to be part of the managing the decommissioning of those telescopes, is there a plan, has there been discussion to remove
Right.
that?
I'm sorry, yes. So there's a specific decommissioning plan. The first telescope that is being decommissioned is the sub-meter telescope, University of California. The plan is soon to be approved. They've done some preliminary work, and that will be the first of the decommissioned telescopes, followed by the University of Hawaii Hilo's teaching telescope, and 3 other telescopes. I don't remember exactly which ones that will follow those 2.
But you said they are working on it, so, I mean, I think the telescopes were decommissioned 5 years ago, maybe longer, and there's still no plan. That concerns me. I think it concerns all of the Hawaiians who have an interest in the mountain. So I assume that should you be confirmed, you, as the representative from the Big Island, would take a stronger interest in seeing that this, in fact, does happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members?
Yes, I do, Chair.
Senator Favela?
Just getting back on the topic on the management of Mauna Kea. I just get one question I guess I can ask you. So if you're managing the way I guess I want to say it is that I don't want to use the word manage. If you mismanage a business and it's not going into the direction that was promised or was supposed to made out to be, and you had time to fix it or whatever the situation is, you think that you would be still managing that business if that business is going down the road or going into bankruptcy because of the mismanagement?
I agree with you. As I stated earlier, I think that we've done a better job more recently. Ultimately, whether there's telescopes on the mountain or not, I think the proper stewardship of the mountain is critical. And to the extent that how that is managed, the key is a proper stewardship. And I will support whatever the process is moving forward to ensure that.
Do you think one of the recommendations should be that the University of Hawaii should not be managing, since they haven't been good stewards to the mountain? I mean, regardless if the telescopes are there or not, going forward at continuing to manage something that they mismanage? I mean, if you're a property manager and you mismanage somebody's property, they'll fire you. So, I mean, how can we fire the University of Hawaii for the years of mismanaging that mountain? That's what the people want to know.
Correct, and I think that process is moving forward, and I look forward to whatever role the university will play in that, whether we are still managing the mountain or not.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Senator Algaran, did you have any questions? No? Okay, I have a number of questions, so. Do you recall I've sent this, Wayne, governance for a new era to the board earlier, and then I think I recently just sent one to the new appointees?
That is correct. That was the article dated 2014.
Yes. And in it, it says that Board members must hold presidents and senior administrators accountable for addressing key goals and objectives and conduct more regular evaluations. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so how will you be able to do that, to conduct more regular evaluations and hold them accountable?
Well, there are several things I think that's key that was addressed in that article, and that is, you know, we need to be asking the president and administration to provide things like review of programs that have been added or subtracted annually, you know, and looking at the criteria for determining how these programs, whether these programs are viable or not, to help make those decisions. You know, we don't implement the plans or the vision, but we have to define the institution's goals, and it's incumbent on us to ensure that we're being updated regularly, but more importantly, we have to ask the right questions at the right time. I myself personally, it takes a little bit of time to understand everything about the university, and I'm still learning after 6 years. My nature is not the bull in the china shop kind of thing, but I also understand that there's a fine balance in not being a wallflower and asking the tough questions at the right time. And I think that's something that we need to do more of.
I certainly appreciate hearing that from you, because that is something that I had hoped that we would get from each and every one of the board members. And one of the reasons why I did send out the Governance for a New Era. And certainly I didn't author that, but it was interesting that it was sent to me because it was very pertinent. So in that light, I'm going to bring up a number of things that I'm wondering whether or not the board have held the administration accountable. And one of them, because of your connection and your being the assistant administrator for North Hawaii Community Hospital, my question is, does the Cancer Center early clinical trials assumptions that they have made concern you, and whether or not this is something that the board has in fact taken up, and whether or not you're holding the administration accountable for this? Because we have in fact gotten a $6.5 million grant from the feds, and the state in fact has matched that $6.5 million for $13 million. And this early clinical trials, from what they have presented to us in the legislature, as well as what I've been hearing from the community and people, that they don't believe that Hawaii has enough specialty cancers that is going to make this program self-sustaining, which is what is being told to us. And if they don't have enough money, then they're going to have to come to the legislature, or you're going to have to cut programs at the university or do something in order to fund the early clinical trials.
So, Chair Kim, I in all due respect to those that say the Cancer Center will be self-sustaining, I'm not sure I agree with that. I believe, like anything else that we do with the university, we need to be looking at ways to run the university with less funding from the legislature, from the state. And there are opportunities that we need to look at the Cancer Center and other places to minimize that dependency on the general funds. Specifically to the Cancer Center, I personally do not believe that in its current operations, can be self-sustaining.
Well, that's certainly music to my ears. I'm sure music to a number of the legislators hearing that. But then they continue to move forward on the early clinical trials when all indications say it's not going to be self-sustaining. So my question is, what are you, as a board member, you shared what you felt, which is, I'm in agreement. But they keep moving on and plowing money in it. And at some point, there's going to be a no return. And people are not going to be happy when down the line we say we're going to have to close down the cancer center or close down the early clinical trials because there's not enough money. So, before we embark, and I've asked for a business plan, I've asked several times, I didn't get it. And when I finally got it, the assumptions that's made in that plan is not in keeping with what they presented to me 2 years ago. So it's very troubling, and I'm just wondering what the board is going to do. Because I shouldn't be the one reviewing it, it should be the board, right?
Correct. And I think there's some opportunities there relative to space that can be leased inside the cancer center that is currently undeveloped. I believe that there's an opportunity to work with the community, whether it's the Hawaii Consortium, but bottom line, again, I think having a once-over look on the operations to see that it's being run as efficient as it possibly could be run is important as well.
Okay, well, I hope you'll take a look at the early clinical trials because, we do have the cancer center there. I believe that, we're not about ready to shut that down, but certainly to add on top of that, which has been not self-sustaining to begin with, to add on the early clinical trials, which all indication says is not going to be self-sustaining as well. The other thing is, we proposed a bill that is still moving in the legislature regarding the to administratively attach the medical school and the cancer center together, which has been studied by the university themselves, which is a proposal that I put forward because university did not go forth in doing that. And yet it has been fought vigorously by the administration. I've not heard from board members about it, but it's ways to be more efficient and ways to cut down on duplication, and yet it's being fought. So why is that, and why hasn't the board do anything about that?
Well, I think, again, the opportunities by having both entities basically on the same campus, you are correct. There are some synergies financially to look at, either having expenses looked at in a joint way will be important. We need to have those conversations. You're absolutely right.
Well, why haven't we, though? I mean, I've been, beating this drum. And again, it's not my opinion, which is what the university keeps pointing to, saying that it's the legislator's opinion. It's certainly the studies that was done by the university. And again, they're next door to each other on the same campus. And as you said, there are certainly synergies there in which there's duplications that we can undo. So, I mean, the board can make that decision. And yet they haven't, and they haven't forced the administration to make that decision. And so it's left to the legislature. And so, yeah, we become the bad guys for it. But then where's the leadership on the board? And that's what I'm asking. And, you're only one, I understand that. And just so happened you're up for renomination. So you're going to get all these questions. It's not personal. But certainly we are looking to leadership, and you're going to be on for another 5 years, should we confirm you. And I am looking for leadership from the Board of Regents because as I read, the Board of Regents is not there just to hire or fire the president and to rubber stamp everything. But the board has exclusive jurisdiction over the internal structure, management, and operation of the university, which is in the Constitution. So we need leadership there.
I agree with you, and I also agree with you. You can't argue studies. The studies have been done. We just need to take action.
Okay. If there's no other questions, I will continue to move on. The other area that I have found that the board was lacking in accountability or holding the administration accountable is that Atherton. And so when Atherton was presented to the board, it was presented in a very faulty formula. That's the best I can describe it as, to the whole point that what was described and what was presented to the board for your approval for the leases has morphed into something else. And Calvert has had to go in there, and it went from student housing to a innovation center, and now it's a P3. And I understand that a third-party private operator will be managing and running the dorms, and they're looking at, I'm thinking, 390 beds if it's approved by the city and the PRU. But then UH will have no obligation to fill those dorm rooms. UH will only be affiliated with the project. Renters could go beyond UH, graduates and undergraduates, if the private operator cannot fill those rooms. And UH will not be determining the occupancy, and renters will be required to sign a 1-year lease. The P3 project, they're projecting that the dorms, a single rents will be $1,941 a month and $19,415 annually, and there's no kitchen. They're going to be shared kitchens. So, I have staff who's renting a full apartment for a lot less than that, and that the double rooms will be $1,546 a month or $15,464 annually. And they will be required to sign a 1-year lease, because the assumption is that these units are going to be rented 12 months out of the year at a 95% occupancy, which is unheard of because even our current dorms don't have that occupancy and is not on a 12-month lease. So we have this project that has morphed into something that was not what you folks agreed to. So how are you holding the university accountable?
For me personally, it's about avoiding making the same mistakes. I think, again, I go back to asking the right questions at the right time. And I personally responsible for not doing enough of that. I was just getting on the board when Atherton came up in 2016. I believe it was the second year I was on the board, because my first year was fulfillment of Carl Carlson's last year of his term. The project initially was, the whole premise was based on student housing. And as the financials worked out, it didn't work. It didn't make any financial feasibility, and it couldn't be self-sufficient. So again, it's part of holding the administration accountable is ensuring that the right questions are asked at the right time, and avoiding, we're never going to be perfect. But we absolutely have to avoid making the same mistakes.
I agree with you. And, since 2016, I have been constantly asking the same questions over and over again. And I'm sure some of you have been in the meetings where I've asked those questions, yet none of it translated back into your board meetings. None of it translated when they've made updated presentations to you guys since, or I'm sorry, to the board, since 2016 to now. So, I keep asking, so even if you folks don't have the right questions, certainly you can hear the questions that we've been asking. And, from the very first time I saw the presentation that was made to you folks, I said, this is a faulty formula. I mean, I'm not a developer, but it's in black and white. They were comparing Atherton with Safeway and Bank of Hawaii and commercial properties. I mean, you can tell right off the bat that there weren't comparable comparisons to be judging whether or not the income was going to be able to be sustained. And then
right, as well as basing the numbers on occupancy 12 months out of the year. You're correct.
Yeah, and so at the last meeting when I asked Calbert Young, and I said, Calbert, I said, this project may be a white elephant if they can't lease these units, because there's another private dorm that's out there now, and they can't fulfill the entire occupancy that they wanted. I said, what's going to happen if you have a white elephant? He goes, well, it's P3, it's a private, so we don't care. I mean, it was a bad attitude, and I told him that. I said, that's not a good attitude. This is a university property that you folks are going to have right across of Sinclair. And I've asked them to look at how can we combine what they want to put at Atherton with Sinclair. And so, your vice president of facilities maintenance haven't even responded when that question was asked. And yet they receive raises. I mean, see, I really can't understand how how the raises correlate with some of these actions that I'm going to be continually bringing up today, because it doesn't. Let me go on. And so Atherton, in order to have the carrying costs, $1.07 million, I'm sorry, $1.1 million had to come out of the Manoa Student Housing Fund. 1.07 came out of interest of all special funds in order to carry the costs. And that is the maintenance, the security, the lease payments, whatever it was, in order to pay for that. And so if over $1 million came out of the Manoa student housing, the question's got to be, what's happening to our housing? And recently, there have been outages at the Waianae Towers. This happened several weeks ago. 2 of the 3 towers were affected. Students were displaced for about a week. The 3rd tower was still out as of last week, and students had to be relocated. So I had staff go and they talked to people at the dorms, and this is what we found out. There was a power outage that left people without power in Hale Waianae for a whole weekend. Lots of residents had their food spoiled and go bad because it was for so long. Housing then moved people that didn't have electricity to temporary rooms, but gave them very short notice and only a certain amount of time to decide what to do. There also have been planned outages that residents were given short notice about 24 hours notice, but not over a week in advance or anything like that. Flooding has also been a huge issue within Hale Waianae. It's almost on a weekly basis that some rooms will start to flood, making some residents to have to move at random times in the week to temporary rooms. It goes on. And the point I'm trying to make is that we're robbing money from the dorms to carry costs for Atherton, and we have dorms that is in bad repair. We're also taking money out of room repair and maintenance for the field for Clarence Ching Field for football, and they didn't come to us for money. They said they're going to take it out of RIM, and the monies that we put in RIM was for certain projects and priorities that they had said they had. So obviously some of these projects are going to wait, and obviously the dorm may be one of them. So isn't these questions kinds of questions that you folks should be asking at the Board of Regent level?
Yes, and part of that is talking about deferred maintenance on the campus, which I believe some of this is linked to. You know, we're at the point now of needing to implement those things that are in the facilities plan to ensure that we're not only trying to minimize additional impact for deferred maintenance, but also looking at how we can be more proactive.
Did you think it's right that $1 million was taken out of the dorms, the student housing, to pay for Atherton, and that these are issues and problems that are going on with the current dorms, that the students are paying for these rents, and yet they're not getting the benefit of the improvements?
Chair, I was not aware of that, but I agree with you, it's not correct.
Okay. Well, I mean, I know that the board members are not paid, but, you know, you folks do step up and we do appreciate your serving. But at some point, and I think governance says that, you know, it's not just you attend the meetings, it's that you have to take the initiative to talk to the students on campus, to visit the campuses, visit the facilities, to see what's going on. I mean, I'm not even there, and yet I saw a little article somewhere in the paper that talked about the dorms, and so we went and checked into it and found out all this was going on with the dorms. And so shouldn't that be stuff that a regent would be looking at or questioning?
Yes.
So how do you get that information if you guys don't know what questions to ask, or you're not aware that these issues are going on? Similarly, when the Warrior gym, the floors were rotting out, and there were problems with the dorm and the water coming in, and it was brought to my attention, and I had to bring it to the attention of the regents, because nobody knew that was going on. But again, this information comes to us, and I'm not sure why it's not getting to the regents, because that problem lasted for longer than it should have. And again, it's accountability. And when you find out that it happened, isn't there something to be done as far as accountability after the fact? Go ahead. It seems like they get raises. All of this happened during this time, and yet they got raises. I'm going to bring out one more. Faculty housing. You were at that meeting, right? You're the vice chair of audit.
That is correct.
And the audit showed that was done in November 9th, 2019, a period from 2014 to 2019, found that UH did not enforce the maximum terms of stay, resulting in faculty staying in these units in excess of 5 to 7 years, and that the maximum tenancy ranged from 1 to 3 years. There were 181 applicants for these units. Was anyone held accountable for this? And what was it that the audit committee finally decided they should do regarding this?
Yeah, I believe the last audit was done in 2013, and that's just too long of a period.
No, this was done in 2019.
Right, no, but the previous audit to that was in 2013. That's too long of a period of time. I agree with you.
Okay, but the findings was that UH officials did not comply with the policies, correct?
That is correct.
So who was held accountable, and what was the accountability? I mean, what was done? Anything? Was there a slap on the wrist? Was there anything?
Well, I mean, there are other things with that audit that presented some opportunities. The substantial reserves, I believe it was over $8 million. But I understand now that there are some large projects in the works for improvements that will, some renovation projects that will go towards improvements. You know, I agree with you. I believe it was Regent McInerney, who was chair at the time, who, by the way, I really miss. And we're at the point now where we have to look at these types of audit reports and take appropriate action, which we've probably not done a good job of in the past.
Yes, because I pulled the minutes from that meeting where you folks got the audit, and it, you know, the whole thing on tenancy wasn't even discussed. You didn't raise any questions except at the very end when I think you accepted the report. Vice Chair Higaki moved to accept and review the program conducted by the office, seconded by Regent Wilson. So it really, you know, concerns me. And there was no recommendation for action. I don't even think this matter was brought up to the whole board of regents. So, you know, your earlier statement was that you can't make the same mistakes over and over again, but if no one is held accountable, if no one is reprimanded in any way or anything is done, then the same thing happens over and over again. And from what I'm bringing up, it seems that that's what's happening.
I agree with you. I think there have been a number of opportunities that we are going to have to learn from, and this is one of them.
I would like to hear more concrete as to how we're going to avoid making the same mistakes over and over again and not holding people accountable, not holding the administration accountable for these things.
Well, I think much like anything else in life, you know, we will have to walk our talk. It's easy for me to tell you right now that Chair Kim, I swear to uphold and to that is what I'm going to do. And but until I build a track record, that's all talk.
Okay, can you at least say that all of these issues that we're raising, that it will be put on the agenda for some discussion?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask you about the pharmacy school, which is on your island, and there have been issues with the pharmacy school. Can you share with us what it is that the regents are doing and how we resolve that?
Well, the whole enrollment issue still needs to be looked at. There's a definite trend in the country. You know, it's like anything else in life. It's a matter of timing. And at the time that the building and the program was being planned, it made a lot of sense to move forward. The industry just collapsed on itself. We're in a way that no one could predict. So I think we have not yet started talking about what that looked like and how we're going to salvage the program to move forward in a scaled down way.
I guess I beg to differ on what you said, that it failed. The market dropped in a way that wasn't predictable. But I believe it might have been predictable if due diligence was done, because all of the universities started jumping on the bandwagon at the same time for pharmacy schools. And you had some huge ones in California that we knew was going to be competition for the University of Hawaii. I recall Vice Chair Kidani saying that the pharmacy school should have been in West Oahu. Yet there was a push to put it on the Big Island and so forth. So there were a lot of indications that there would be issues with the pharmacy school, and yet the university plowed ahead, and yes, they received a lot of pressure from the legislature to put it, from some members to put it on the Big Island. But again, at the final decision has to be made by the university in the best interest of the university and not succumb to some of the pressures by area legislators.
Well, so you raise an excellent point, and I agree with you. The article that you sent us, one of the covenants in there, specifically towards the end of the article, talks exactly about making decisions based on pressure from external sources, which if you ran a business and that was your mantra, it may be difficult to be successful. I agree with you.
So I guess it's like, so what do we do with the pharmacy school if it continues, the enrollment continues to dwindle? And
yeah, we've not received any kind of plan at this point from UH-Hilo.
shouldn't that be something that they should be? I know that now they want to rethink some of the things that they were going to do and change some of the I'm not sure what the programming. But again, that was not the intent to begin with. And again, do we hold the administration accountable for these decisions? And if we do, how do we hold them accountable so to ensure? That's why when they bring up the clinical trials and they bring up all these other, Atherton, I keep saying, you folks have a bad track record. Hilo Dorms is another one that was a bad track record. Right?
Absolutely. I think, again, these are learning experiences, and we just can't make the same mistakes over and over again.
But we've been making it for decades. I've been at the Senate since 2000, and I've been raising these same concerns, and my predecessors have been raising the same concerns. We've been raising concerns regarding workload, regarding tenure, regarding researchers. I mean, these are issues that Representative Choi brought up, Representative Senator Holt brought up years ago, and yet we seem to be at the same place. So I'm hoping our other two nominees are listening, because you folks are going to have to be a team in trying to see that we can address some of these issues going forward. And I hope that I will be here for the next 5 years during your folks' term to see that some of these issues get addressed.
Absolutely.
Members, any other questions for our nominee? Hearing no others. Okay, so we will be probably taking up the vote probably after tomorrow's meeting, because I don't think we're going to be able to get to everyone by 4:30 today. So with that, I hope that you will take to heart some of the issues we raised. And again, you are on the hot seat because you are the only one that have history of being on the board. And so we're placing all of our faith in you and in your leadership, that you will lead the board, not next year, but right after you leave us at your very next board meeting.
Yes, we have our regular monthly meeting tomorrow morning. But Chair, thank you very much, and thank you, Vice Chair Kidani and committee members. By the way, if I may, Chair, I can send by email a copy of the decommissioning plan for Vice Chair Kidani and other members of the committee.
Okay, we would appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on. Let me get my paperwork in order here. Okay, so our GM 786, is that correct? 786? Yes, 786 for Diane Paloma. Diane, welcome. Thank you very much for being here. I apologize that I missed your call yesterday, but you are here now, so would you like to start with an opening statement?
Yes, aloha mai kākou, aloha na alaka'i o ka Senate no ka Hawai'i nei, o wau o Diane Leinani Paloma, noho au ma Wailupe no ka mokupuni o Oahu, mahalo nui no keia halawai, no ke kuleana no ka Board of Regents, no ke kula nui o Hawaii. Aloha to you Senate leaders, to the Higher Education Committee. My name is Diane Cheryl Leinani Paloma. I reside in Wailupe, better known as Aina Haina, in the Senate District number 9. So I'd like to acknowledge my Senator Stanley Chang, and House District 18 with Representative Mark Hashem. Thank you so much for this opportunity regarding the business of the Board of Regents for the University of Hawaii, and mahalo to the governor for my nomination. I just want to start off by saying the university has very much a dear and close to my heart. I am a graduate in master's in '99 from the School of Business. I worked for 3 years at the School of Medicine in the Department of Native Hawaiian Health, being able to build and strategize the first clinical academic department dedicated to Indigenous health for Native Hawaiians. And I think most closely near and dear to my heart, my mother is a 30+ year UH employee. She's retired now and very much enjoys her retirement. But years of catching the bus to her office after school made me feel like I grew up on campus, specifically Manoa. And over the years, my work has taken me to collaborations with Kapi'olani Community College, with West Oahu, to neighbor islands. At one point, I taught at HMSA out of Mauna Kea at MCC's center. And so, of course, the university has a lot of meaning to me. And I think that I've been, as a graduate of Kamehameha schools, it has been ingrained in me to provide public service, to give back to my community, to the very community that has supported me to be able to engage, listen, and be able to hear all of the concerns. I realize this is a huge kuleana. I realize also that I am a minority, being female on this board, which I would encourage very much so in the future to have more female regents. And I think that the main issues that you raised, and especially with the previous questioning, a lot of the literature and material in preparation for this has really made me see how big and large this system is, but also how big and large the opportunities are for the state. And so I'd like to contribute in that way and hope I can bring the skill sets, bring that aloha, bring that kindness to the table at a broader level for the entire state. And I did also hear very much about the accountability issues, and happy to answer questions and address some of those things. Mahalo.
Thank you very much for that. Before I open it up to questions, I just want to ask this one question first of all. I believe you did get a copy of Governance for a New Era, and in it, it's the blueprint for higher education trustees by American Council of Trustee and Alumni, and it states on page 14, to be effective, boards must have members who can be leaders, willing to invest the unpaid time, understand the issues, and raise tough questions. And so I interpret this as not just attending a monthly board meeting and committee meetings, but visiting the campuses, visiting facilities such as the Warrior Center, the Schuyler School of Business, talking to students, neighbor island campuses as well. And so will you have the time, and will you commit the time and energy to do this?
Yes, absolutely. As I said, yes, I realized the kuleana. I did get the proposed meeting schedules. I realized the amount of time and energy that it's going to take in order to accomplish this. But again, the aloha that I have for this university, the contributions that I'd like to make to the university, to my community, to my lahui, are also, first and foremost in this process. And so I'm also very curious. I'm also very inquisitive. So I do want to ask the questions. I do want to get to know all of the different departments, why we have certain things, why we don't have certain things. And so I'm ready and willing to be able to ask those questions and invest the time to be able to understand it more so that I can make those appropriate decisions.
And with the questions come consequences, and you're able to do that as well?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Thank you. Members, questions? Bringing up 2 questions. Anybody have any questions? Okay, Senator Favela, go ahead.
Yeah. Just what Senator Kim was saying about the questions, and the previous GM 787, we had a lot of questions from, and I know you are a new appointee. My thing for you, as you speaking about how a lot of this is going to be your kuleana. I would ask you, not only when you, like how Senator Kim, Chair Kim was saying about visiting the campus and doing your due diligence, what I want to do when a session is done, I've been invited to go to a lot of the professors in the Hawaiian history and the Hawaiian department at the university to look at all of the issues that they're having in the sense of not fair practices that are happening on campus. And the same thing that what Senator Kim said, when you ask these questions and stuff was being answered or come forward, there's a lot of consequences. So these professors that came out in the beginning, very strong, also was same way, kind of put in the back burner. So if you can you please, when you do visit, can you check that area out of the Hawaiian studies in Hawaiian language on the University of Hawaii campus?
Absolutely, Senator Favela. I will say some of those are my peers. Some of those have been past kumu, and some of them are also, I see, future leaders in our state. So absolutely, yes, I'd be honored to be able to be invited and listen and learn from all of their mana'o. Mahalo.
Mahalo.
Any other questions? I just want to follow up on that. I too have a background in with Anti-Maikiaiu and in the Hawaiian culture, and but as a regent and looking objectively at programs, especially during this time when they're looking at the numbers, and if programs don't have enough students enrolled, or they have a history of not having enough, some of these programs are being recommended to be either changed in some manner or dissolved, because obviously the university can't be all things to all people. And so if it happens to be something close to your heart, are you going to be able to move and do what's best for the entire university, and not necessarily just for the fact that, that's your area of interest?
Yes, Chair Kim, that would be obviously, yes, the first and foremost role of the Board of Regent is in the best interest of the university. Obviously, yes. I think how I would resolve some of those issues, if it were something near and dear to my heart, of course, is to look at all the options and find the opportunities possible for it to continue. And perhaps it may not continue at the university, but could continue in other capacities and be able to maybe hand off or collaborate or acquire or merge or find other ways to be able to continue the learning, even if it doesn't necessarily mean at the university.
Because we face the same challenges. You know, every one of us in the legislature have our own near and dear to our hearts. And if we did that, we couldn't cut anything in the budget or any program because it's not easy to do that. And certainly you have friends that are involved in the programs, and it breaks my heart when they write me and say, you know, please don't dissolve this program or please don't cut this budget. And yet we have to, because that's just, you know, the way you have to balance everything. In the same realm, having been with the medical school, will you be able to, and also with the foundation, be able to separate yourself, again, looking at the big picture and not necessarily advocating because of your connections and past relationships with those areas?
Yes, Chair Kim, and I actually think that some of the insight in my time previously at the medical school, my time with the UH Foundation also will help me lend to make a little bit better decisions in that way, and also be able to have have the wherewithal, right, to be able to look at, is it a conflict of interest? Is it even a perceived conflict of interest? And to be able to look at my role first and foremost would be as regent, and so my duty, my kuleana to the university would be that first and foremost. Yes.
Thank you.
Mahalo.
And should you recuse yourself from a vote because of the perceived conflict of interest or a conflict, you also know that you need to also refrain from participating in the discussion as well.
Discussion.
Right.
Yes.
And,
yes, I'm aware.
right.
Mahalo.
Okay. You said in your questionnaire, your response to the questionnaire, stated the Board of Regents should find ways to operate cohesively and develop their own working relationships, whether through retreat, planning sessions, orientations, so that they're able to find quick and appropriate decisions. But under the Sunshine Law, when two regents meet and discuss university business, that encounter is considered a meeting for purposes of triggering all sunshine procedural requirements, unless that interaction between or among the regents falls within a specific exception. And that practical advice is that regents should not discuss university business or commit to decisions except at appropriately noticed meetings. So I understand the need for wanting to get together to find quick and appropriate decisions. However, because of the Sunshine Law, that is something that has to be discussed in a board meeting, and therefore may not be a quick decision because the public would want to have their input as well. So you are aware of that, right?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. And definitely noted. I have some limited experience with permitted interaction groups, PIGs, and yes, when I wrote that, it was more along the lines of possible collaboration, and also looking at ways that we, from the literature you shared, the shared governance, absolutely yes. Very much noted and acknowledged. Thank you so much for the reminder. I appreciate that.
You also stated the Board of Regents have been, to my knowledge, effective in ensuring an accountable administration in the past year. And based on my questions to the previous nominee, do you still feel that the Board of Regents have been effective in ensuring accountability?
Thank you for that question, Chair Kim. I think since, of course, learning more, and I think I qualified my insight as to I'm able to see what's in the media, I'm able to see what's in the newspaper. A lot of the things that were discussed with the previous Regent Higaki, I was not aware of some of those issues, especially with housing. I think part of the role of the Regent, it will be exactly to do that and to look at a lot of the details, to look at those types of reactions. I would like to say if I saw something in the paper, if it hits the media, then it is definitely an issue. And why haven't we resolved that before it hits the media or an editorial or an op-ed? There should be mechanisms in order to help address those issues before they even get to the op-ed or the media. And so I think as I start to learn and as I start to gain traction on the Board of Regents, that I'll be able to better understand the mechanisms for how communication flows, for how we are informed as a board, how administration gets that information to us in a timely manner, and that way we can react before, and with all due courtesy, Senator Kim, I see that by the time it comes to you, it's a little bit larger of an issue than it should be. And so by the time it gets to you, what has failed along the way in order to make it so that we can rectify that situation before it has to become a topic of discussion at the legislature. So I absolutely think that, as I onboard, it will be a steep learning curve for me, but I'm able, I think, to be able to look at things objectively, to look at all of the options and opportunities available, and look forward to working with other regents as well as administration in order to make those accountable items occur.
Thank you. Many times you're not going to be able to be ahead of the ball game, and it will be after the fact. But I think what I am looking for, and others, is that once you do find out about it, that something is done or that it's taken up. And what we've seen is that it hasn't, even after it's brought up time and time again. And a good example is that faculty housing, when we found out, and it was brought to my attention, that there were people still living in these units, faculty that were overstaying by years and nothing is done. Then I found out that there was an audit done 2 years ago. And so when we start looking for it, there was nothing done for that audit. And so instead of sitting down and saying, well, there's nothing can be done, introduce the resolution and have the university come back to report to us, and now come back next year and say, what have they resolved? But again, that's something the board should have done. The board got those minutes back in February of, the report back in February of 2020, and this is 2021. And there was no effort by the board to follow up on all of those egregious things that happened and hold people accountable. So again, and that's the frustrations that we have here, because it shouldn't be us doing it. And, the Board of Regents oversee the university. The legislature will oversee the whole state, and I happen to be the chair of the higher ed, so I am focusing on the university, but I also have to focus in on my district and all the other committees that I'm on. So, the university is the only thing that the regents, in your capacity as regents, need to focus on. And so I would hope that that kind of attention would be given to some of these things. Do you feel that the university presentations that they make to you and the information that you will receive by the administration should be the only information you receive on some of these issues?
Oh, absolutely not. I don't think that should be the only form of communication. I actually I see the Board of Regents' role as active listening to all facets of the university, faculty, students, administration, staff. I also believe listening to unions are extremely important, UPA, HGEA, being able to get a broader picture and a scope of the situation is always better than having one source of communication. I've learned over the years that there's always 3 sides to the story, not just 2. And so looking at each of those sides, looking at each of those lenses is important to effectively understanding what the core of the situation and the problems are. So absolutely, ole paui ka ike, kahalau ho'okahi. Not all knowledge is gained at one source.
So I hope that you will not just sit there and listen to testimonies from all of those individuals or groups that you mentioned, but that you will make it a point to go to the dorms like we did, talk to the students, ask people in the community regarding clinical trials, whether or not those whatever is being proposed is flawed or not. And in the case of Atherton, which was a foundation, by the way, the foundation that did that whether or not, those things would work, in the larger community. And it may not be in the form of a testimony. It may be in a form that you have to reach out to people that you know in different fields to give you an objective point of view. And never are we going to tell you, or I'm going to tell you how you should vote or what you should do, but I will be looking at whether or not the issues have been discussed via your minutes and whether or not it's been exhausted and then remedies were looked at and justifications.
I absolutely expect to be stopped in Costco or Long's and be approached on the street from constituents and from students and faculty and people who might know me and people who don't know me. So I'm very much aware of my role and that I will be very much happy to be engaged with learning more about the university. Mahalo.
Can I ask you what your stance is on Mauna Kea?
Right now, my stance on Mauna Kea is that I see it as a cultural resource. I see it as a sacred mauna. As a hula practitioner, I do believe that there are elements of mismanagement, but I am open to looking at the reasons why the telescopes have been approved in the past, and I feel I don't know the full extent. I do know one side fairly more than the other, and I'm interested to know how TMT really would impact our community, right? And I will say I've heard one side and I've engaged in one side, and you know, as you said previously, my job is to be objective, and my role is to look at all voices and all lenses of that situation. So that would be my stance at this point in time.
Despite your position on it, whether you're for or against it, whatever the majority determines, will you be able to support that action even though you don't agree with it?
I would have to, yes, absolutely. That would be the role of myself as Board of Regent.
Okay, that is in the Board of Regents overview, so I just thought
Yeah.
I would bring that up.
Yes, mahalo, thank you.
And I want to get in this last question so you don't have to come back. You did state in your response, biggest challenges have been to keep the university fiscally sustainable while providing the best possible academics unique to our state. And I guess that's the big question. And I know you're not going to be able to give us that, but certainly there are areas that we can become more efficient. One of the areas was, you know, combining the medical school and cancer center as far as administratively. There are other ways, and yet we seem to get people that at the university that fight against some of these changes, and so it has to be done at the board level. And is this something that, as a regent, you'll be willing to take that tough stance and make these decisions?
Yes, I will. To the best of my ability, gathering all of the necessary information, making sure that, you know, like a research project, you're investigating every single possible outcome to the best of your knowledge with the information that you have in front of you. So yes, I take that very much to heart and appreciate your counsel on that. Mahalo.
Okay, just know that a lot of times when this question comes up at the board that there's not enough money, the answer is, well, we'll go to the legislature and ask the legislature. And that is not a solution at this point in time. And so I caution you when that comes up again. Members,
Duly noted, thank you.
we are at 4:30. We're going to be stopped. Is there any last minute questions?
Just a few, go ahead. No?
Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, as a former faculty member of John Burns School of Medicine, will you be able to look at the issues relating to the School of Medicine and Cancer Center objectively?
Yes, thank you so much again for that reminder, Senator Favela. Yes, I have worked with the JAPSOM in the past. I have very much appreciated my time there, and I do realize that my past experience may influence my decisions, but I will remain objective, and I'm going to be looking at all of the necessary components to making the right decision with all of the evidence and the information that I have. Thank you so much for that question.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no further questions, Diane, thank you very much. We will be into decision-making tomorrow. I want to apologize to Dr. Hanning. We did not get to you today, but we will first thing tomorrow at 3 p.m. Again, in this room, and a video link will be sent to you, or you may already have it, for our continuation. And of course, the nominees are welcome to join us to listen in, but we are done with your questioning at this point in time. So members, if there are no other questions or business to take care of, we're going to adjourn and reconvene tomorrow at 3 p.m. Thank you. We are adjourned.